Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Year of the Book, where we are documenting our writing journey and all the bumps along the way. So today I wanted to circle back to one of my very first videos, which was called A Writer Who Doesn't Read, where I talked about how my reading habits have declined over the years, and that has now changed a little bit, so I wanted to talk about that. But firstly, what did I say in that video? Well, I tied my sort of decline and the reduction of my reading time to a few things. So the first was getting a smartphone, and the second thing was starting my academic career. And the third thing was, I think, having kids, is what I said. And all those things happened broadly within the same few years, more or less. So firstly, getting a phone. Before, I was quite a late smartphone adopter. I think it was maybe 2014 when I got a smartphone. I don't even know when they came out. Anyway, I was quite late to the game. But inevitably, over time as well, as my smartphone usage, do people even still say smartphones? As my phone usage increased, so too did the time that I spent looking at it instead of looking at books. Secondly, starting my PhD and starting to work as an academic meant that, and still means that, reading and writing is a massive part of my day-to-day job. So before I started my PhD, I had quite a hands-on job working with children and young people. And then when I started my PhD, I became, largely desk-based and doing a vast amount of reading every day, right? That hasn't changed. So this week, for example, in the past 2 days, I've read maybe 25 journal articles, probably upwards of 100,000 words. 2 days solidly just reading and taking notes. So I do spend a lot of time reading for work, and I think that led to a kind of switch in my head where, as in the past, reading was like leisure activity, it was downtime, it was enjoyment, and then reading became work time. And I think my brain started to associate it with that, such that after a day at work, when I've been sat at the desk reading things all day, in the evening, I often just don't feel like doing it. So that kind of reduced my reading time. And I would most want to read when I was on holiday. And I think it was because I would associate holiday, I'm like, holiday, downtime, reading, downtime. So I think that's what my brain was doing. And then the second thing was just having kids and having less kind of downtime overall and more overwhelm. Also reduced my reading time. So none of those things have still changed. Still got kids, still working as an academic, still scrolling on that smartphone. So what has changed? Well, since I started my writing journey, I started to want to read more again. So this is kind of really obvious in a way, right? Because better writers are better readers, or is that what it is? Like, writers need to read. Anyway, that's what everybody says, and I don't think I'm an exception to that. Now, I did used to read avidly as a child and as a younger adult, and I sort of binged my way through lots and lots of books and lots of different genres as a younger person. But I was certainly not reading very actively, and it would basically take me a very long time to get through things, and I would read maybe 3 or 4 books a year, right? So that's where I was. And then when I started my writing journey, a few different things kind of pushed me to want to increase my reading time again. So one thing was simply just like FOMO from watching BookTube and seeing people share about different books and all. I just realized like there's so much that I'm missing out on, especially because a lot of the literature that I used to read was pretty old stuff, and I'm just like not up to date. Like, my reading knowledge from the past isn't enough to help me be a better writer now, because compared to when I was younger and the type of books that I had access to, there's now vastly more diversity in terms of like the pool of authors that I can get access to now versus growing up as a millennial in the north of England. So there's so much more out there, so much richness out there that I'm missing out on. And okay, I was still reading, but I was not reading a lot. So I got FOMO from watching BookTube, and I realised that in order to be a good writer now, I need to be reading more now as well. And then I also realised that even though I have read a huge amount in the past, like as a writer, it still helps, but like I actually have a very poor working memory. So in order to utilize something that I've read, I need to be kind of constantly reading in order to be writing well, if that makes sense, right? So having read a lot in the past is not going to help me remember those techniques, those inspirations, all that good stuff. It's not going to come into my head as a writer now. I need constant reminders of that, right? So it was those things. And it was also the fact that I realized that I do actually miss reading, especially like reading before going to bed in the evening, which is something that I just stopped doing altogether. So I've made 3 really small changes in my day-to-day life that have got me back into reading. That's what I wanted to share with you today. So the first thing I started doing was doing little micro reading sessions actually during my working day. Now, I work from home. I'm also self-employed a lot of the time. I have a lot of flexibility and independence in my work, so I'm privileged enough to be able to take little breaks throughout the day. But you know what? If I was in an office, I would be like at the coffee machine or like talking to someone, you know? So instead, what I started doing was reading short stories and especially flash fiction in literary magazines. So before I started my writing journey, even a few months ago, I didn't really know what literary magazines were. I'd heard of like the New Yorker, but that's about it. I'd never really read or engaged with fiction in that way at all. Right? And then I discovered literary magazines, and these are magazines that I want to submit my own work to. And I would be a fool if I was submitting work to a magazine without having ever read any of the stories that they publish. Some magazines are subscription only, but a lot of them have a lot of free content and free stories that you can read online. So what I started to do, and this is especially easy with flash fiction up to 1,000 words or so, is say I need a little break from work, I'll just open up one of the magazines that I've been interested in sending something to. I'll read 1 or 2 of their flash pieces or a short story. And this means that I am getting more reading in, and it's also directly beneficial for my writing because these are magazines that I want to get published in myself. So that has been really good, especially because you're reading short fiction, flash, short stories. This is exactly the type of thing that I'm writing. It's incredibly useful in a practical way. And it's also started to show me just how much you can do with short fiction as well, because there's some absolutely amazing writing out there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I started to actively read multiple books at once and feel okay about it. So in the past, I did always have several books going at once, but I sort of felt rubbish about it, and I feel like, oh, well, I kind of want to start this one, but I need to finish this other one first, and I never really DNF'd anything, even if I didn't really like it, if I really couldn't get through it. Okay, War and Peace, Moby Dick, didn't happen, right? But often if there was like a book that I started, then I'd be like, oh, I didn't really like this, but I would usually feel like I had to finish it. And then I realized I didn't have to do that. Actually, it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago when I was watching one of Charlie Wall's from Walls of Horror videos. He talked about that realization that you don't need to finish every book. And I was like, okay, I'm just now having that realization. So yes, that has been really helpful, and it means that I no longer feel blocked thinking, oh, I've got to finish this book that I'm not really into, or I just don't feel like reading that day, but actually I can just switch to something else. So now I have next to me on my bedside table 6 books. One of them I have actually finished, and the others are all in various states of progress, and I'm now okay with that because it means that I have a pool of books to draw on, and I'll just go with what I feel like reading at any one time. And then the last thing I've done, which is very simple and I don't do it every day, and that is I just force myself to read for 10 minutes, essentially. If I can feel like the law of YouTube pulling me in, I sometimes I'm like, okay, let's just watch YouTube. But sometimes I'm like, let's do 10 minutes. I set the timer for 10 minutes. I'm not trying to finish anything. I'm not trying to get through a chapter or a number of pages. I'm just reading for 10 minutes. Sometimes the timer goes off and I'm like, okay, I'm done. Sometimes it goes off and I'm like, actually, I'm going to keep reading, right? And that works for me. That helps me get a bit more reading done when I really kind of can't be asked. Well, I want to, but I can't be asked. So that's it. Just 3 little things that have helped me get back into reading and increase the amount of time that I spend reading. And I've also increased the sort of diversity of what I'm reading as well and started to widen that pool. And that's it. I hope this was helpful. If you're struggling with reading, even if you love it, I hope that there's some tips in there that you might be able to apply yourself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!